you miss me? I've been out of a comatose, but the depression.
Hello and welcome to Controlled Burns, the weekly hobby list podcast from me, your host, Andrew Burns, or Slow Burn from Wildfire Gaming. And we're going to be wrapping up our second year with the podcast, calendar year, rather. And we already discussed my year in music for the year, all the albums that I listened to in 2025 and kind of the things that I've been up to in that area. And so I wanted to take another episode to just sort of talk about everything else, talk about the books I read this year, the movies I watched this year, and then, of course, the video games that I played this year. Um, I will say this was a much more well-rounded year for me in terms of my entertainment consumption. Definitely a lot less heavy on the video game side than what we've seen in years past. So I'm looking forward to diving into it and kind of looking back on how I spent my time this year. Before we go any further, Controlled Burns is a weekly hobby list podcast with a particular focus on lists and topics related to video games, music, TV, and film, as well as other hobbies and aspects of pop culture. If you're interested in writing into the podcast, having your comments or questions right on air, you can write in at controlledburns with an ES at gmail.com. So I did an interesting ex- experiment's probably the wrong word, maybe exercise this year, where I actually tried to keep stock of how much time I spent doing four main activities with my free time: playing video games, watching shows or movies, reading, and then just listening to music or working on music because I did do my top 500 songs this year, so that took up a considerable part of my time, particularly in the first half of the year with my music consumption. So, that was kind of an interesting. This is the first time I've done that where I actually tried to, throughout the entire year, tried to actually keep tabs on that. And I was actually able to do it pretty well. I was able to train my brain to actually um, keep track of that thing. It's not perfect, but I do have an estimate down to, a 5 minute window. So I wanted to go over that to start. So with video games, I mentioned that this was definitely less of a video game year for me than what I've had in years past. I remember 2020 in particular was a huge video game year for me where I was really up on all of the current games and spent a lot of time doing that to the expense of kind of everything else. And that was my last basically year as a single man. So it's definitely been diminishing since then. But this year was a significant drop. But still, by far the thing I did the most in terms of my free time, I spent 849 hours and 5 minutes playing video games based on my count. Next up was watching shows and movies, which is interesting. This does not count the NFL or sports, which I really only follow the NFL because this would definitely be higher if it did. But I don't really count that because I usually do other things while I'm watching the NFL because it's got so much commercials. Like you kind of have to do something else or else you go insane. Um, so I don't count that, but I counted everything else. So that's watching TV shows and movies. And we're gonna get into the movies that I watched this year, but the majority of that time was definitely spent watching TV shows. My brother Brandon, who we've had on the podcast before, comes over every Monday, and we spend some time playing video games and watching shows together. So that definitely inflated those numbers. With Reagan, my wife Reagan, I've watched. We've been trying to catch up on Survivor, so we spent a decent amount of time watching that. Obviously, we watched Andor season two. We watched through all of Game of Thrones this year. We're now watching through Better Call Saul for the second time with my brother because he hasn't seen that. He hadn't seen Game of Thrones either. And I guess House of the Dragon I included Game of Thrones. So that's kind of what took up the lion's share of my time. I didn't end up. I think last year I said I was going to keep track of the shows I watch. I did not do that, but that is. I did keep track of the time that I spent doing that activity. So yeah, 293 hours and 55 minutes for that activity. Next up was reading at 210 hours and 40 minutes spent reading. And so this is a combination of reading books, but this is obviously mostly referring to, I've been reading, we'll go into the books that I read this year. Um, and I am looking forward, I think next year might even be a bigger year for reading for me. I've definitely been enjoying reading a lot this year, particularly in the latter portion of this year. But a lot of that time is also spent reading old magazines, specifically old Game Informer magazines. And new Game Informer magazines since they're back. But I put that, I factor that into this as well. And I'm actually on issue on, you can go, when Game Informer returned, they actually posted all of their archives for their magazine, which is like really interesting. It's great from a historical perspective, but it's also just very interesting for me as a kind of a student of the industry to kind of go back and just see what people were talking about, see what kind of slipped through the the cracks, see what didn't wasn't viewed as a super big deal that actually was. Just all that kind of stuff is just really interesting to go back and look at it with a hindsight of what we know now. And so Game Informer goes all the way back to 1991. So I have read through the first 4 years of Game Informer. I'm in 1995, specifically March 1995 right now with issue number 23. So that's been a fun little project that I've been doing this year. And then last was music. Music was I spent 146 hours and 15 minutes listening to music this year and or working on my musical lists. So still a lot more than it has been in years past. Now there are years where I probably did a lot more than 146 hours, but I don't know. 146 hours for just music is quite a bit. And we went through the albums that I listened to last year, or last episode. I was listening to this year, last episode. I actually listened to a few more albums since then. I can't remember. I gotta remind myself of what the last thing that I had listened to whenever I did the podcast was. It might have been The River by Bruce Springsteen. So I posted my last episode on December 8th. Okay, so we'll say everything before that. So the last thing I'd probably listen to then was Memories of Fantasies for Piano and Cello by TPR and Roxanne Janot. So I might have mentioned that last time. It's possible the last thing I listened to was Live in New York City by Bruce Springsteen. But anyway, since December, we'll say 7th, including that TPR album, I listened to that. I listened to The River by Bruce Springsteen on December 9th. December 11th, I listened to the Hammersmith Odeon London 75 album from Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. Really, really incredible live album. The best I've ever heard, which is saying something because Bruce has some amazing live albums, and I've listened to some great live albums from other bands as well. But yeah, it was a show that he did in London. It was his first time in London in 1975. So it was before he was super, super popular, but he was obviously famous at that point. And he had done Born to Run. That was the year Born to Run came out. So he was kind of touring off of that, I imagine. So that was amazing. I listened to Perceptronium, which was an album by the Rainbow Girls that came out in 2015. This was an album that my wife Reagan really wanted me to listen to. Or I don't think she really cared about the album, but she wanted me to listen to this band. She was exposed to this band through like a kind of a festival thing that she went to earlier this year. And it was okay. It was a I would say a solid C tier album, way below the quality of what I normally listen to this year. Definitely the worst album I heard this year, I have to say. But still, there was a couple in particular standout tracks there. And then I listened to another Bruce Springsteen live album. This was the legendary 1979 No Nukes concerts. It literally is called Legendary in the title. So it was a great show. It was also like really just behind that Hammersmith show in terms of probably the second best live album that I ever heard. Just hearing him at the height of his powers in the 70s was really amazing to be able that was documented and that we are able to hear that today. And then these last couple albums that I listened to, one was on December 18th, and then one was today, as I record this, December 19th, were these two albums by this band called The Deer. The Deer is a really not well-known band. I think they're based out of Austin, Texas. I saw the singer of The Deer, her name is Grace Park, although I think she goes by something else now. I think because she's married now. Anyway, I know her as Grace Park, or I think it's Grace Rowland now. But I listened to the first two projects, their first two albums from The Deer, which is kind of her project. And they've done 4 albums total, so I'm going to listen to the other two in the next couple days is the plan. But yeah, I listened to those first two albums. I really enjoyed her when I saw her. She was the opening act for John Craigie. One of the times that I saw him with my wife, and actually my cousin Brett came to this show. It was the only time that he saw John Craigie live. And that was a really cool. I remember my cousin Brett in particular was just really blown away by Grace Rowland. It was basically just her and a piano, and it was a really incredible performance. And I really enjoyed listening to these Deer albums. Both of them are great. This one that I listened to today, Tempest and Rapture, which they did in 2016, is really great, in particular. So very cool it's nice to go back to and listen to something. Again, kind of inspiring to listen to somebody that is like way, 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 way less popular than obviously what I've been listening to lately with the Coldplay and the Bruce Springsteen and things of that nature. So that's been really fun to go back and do that. So just catching you up on where I am with my album listening since the last episode. So that's 91 albums I've listened to this year, 37 of which were new to me. So that's the albums I listened to since my last episode. But now we're going to get into the new stuff, which is we're going to start with the books I read in 2025, I think, because that's, it's definitely the shortest list. Obviously, it takes a lot of time to get through a book, particularly for me because we've been reading some pretty long books, Reagan and I. And so we really only have, it depends on what you classify as a book in a way. So I have at least five. I just read today there's a little booklet that came with the Psychonauts Psych Odyssey, which is this incredible documentary that this very small production company called Two Player Productions put together, documenting the development, the in full development of Psychonauts 2, which is an amazing game, one of the greatest games I've ever played. Came out in 2021. But yeah, it's an amazing, amazing documentary that I recommend to anybody if you're even mildly interested in video games or how they are made. But even if you're not, it's still I think is a good watch because like my wife, for instance, really enjoyed it, and it's almost like The Office, but in real life with real people. And there's so much stuff going on there. There's a lot of creativity going on there. There's a lot of human life drama that happens there. It's funny, but it's also very touching. It's an amazing, amazing piece of art. But anyway, I got you can see it for free on YouTube, all 33 episodes that they did. But I bought the Blu-ray collection, and it came with a little booklet that the Two Player Productions guys wrote, sort of documenting how they went about that process and sort of giving some insight there. And I read that over the last 24 hours. So if you count that as a book, then it's six books. But if you don't count that as a book, then I read five books this year, and these are very much books. It started back in April. I finished Blood of Elves by Andrzej Sapkowski, which is the first kind of full book that he did in the Witcher series. Um, there are a couple of short story collections that came out before that, and then he also did sort of a prequel book that takes place at the same time as some of those short stories called what is that one called? Season of Storms. Keep wanting to say Storm of Swords, which is Game of Thrones, but Season of Storms. So I've read all of the Witcher books once, and then I've been reading them very slowly, working through reading them to my wife Reagan, and so we read the first mainline book that takes place after those short stories, Blood of Elves, on April 19th, and then on May 24th we finished The Time of Contempt, which is the second one. So then that was it. We're pretty close to finishing the third one, but it's been on and off with our Witcher stuff. I'm kind of wanting to get back to it now, but we'll see how that works out, especially since was my last day at work for a 2 week period because I'm going to be off for the holidays. So I'm really looking forward to taking some time for myself and really just enjoying some time with my family and also just some time with just me and my wife where we can sort of relax and just enjoy some time together. So that's gonna be great. But anyway, yes, read those two Witcher books. So those were rereads because I had read them before. She hadn't experienced them before, so they were new to her. Then the next three books were all new to me. One of them is A Storm of Swords, which is the third book in the Song of Ice and Fire series. I had read A Clash of Kings last year, and I maybe a Game of Thrones last year too. I can't remember for sure when I got those, but anyway, I read those two. This is my first time actually reading through the books. Obviously, I have seen the show. We've talked about it extensively on the podcast. I'm planning on doing a podcast with my wife Reagan discussing A Storm of Swords and this next book that I read, which I'll go ahead and say on November 21st, we finished A Night of the Seven Kingdoms, which is a short story collection. They're not really super short stories, quite frankly, but three stories from George R. R. Martin about Duncan the Tall and Aegon, who is this like kind of child that ends up that's in the Targaryen line that ends up later on becoming king. But he right now he's just a kid in these stories, and he's sort of the squire for Duncan the Tall, which is just kind of this legendary knight of old. And it's a really fun collection of stories. They're making well, like if they have made a television series based off at least the first of those stories that is going to be airing, I think, in about a month, in mid-January. So I'm looking forward to seeing how they did that. But we read that book too. And then just yesterday, I finished for the first time ever The Great Gatsby, which I had started reading because I found this really great website. Let's see if I can pull it up here so that if you're interested in sort of reading some great books, It's a great resource. It's literally just called The Greatest Books of All Time, and it uses the URL thegreatestbooks.org. But it's a list that basically encapsulates 715 different best of book lists with the goal of forming a definitive guide to the world's most acclaimed books. And so that's really interesting, and I love stuff like that. So uh, I was gonna start from the top of that, and at the time when I did that, The Great Gatsby was number one. What's interesting is the list has actually been updated, and now number one is Ulysses, which is cool. I'm definitely going to I actually just started Ulysses today, right before this podcast, and whenever I wrap up here, I think I'm going to read a little bit more of it. So I'm interested to see what I think about that. But The Great Gatsby, wow, I really, really loved it. I was shocked by how much I loved it. And I love it to the point where I would say that I think it is my favorite book that I've ever read at this point, which granted, I read my reading history is not super good. I went to a really small school that did not require a lot of reading. Unfortunately, I've read a few classics, but not really. Like the only one that I really read when I was a kid was Tom Sawyer's. Well, I started Tom Sawyer, but I don't think I even finished it. And then I read Treasure Island, which I did read all of, but I don't remember very well. And I've read like To Kill a Mockingbird, which is of course a legendary book, and I definitely need to go back and read that again because that could be my favorite book of all time. But it's been so long since I read it. But since, as an adult, I really haven't read much at all. It's really only in the last couple years that I've gotten more into it with the Song of Ice and Fire and the Witcher books. But yes, The Great Gatsby, like a piece of classic literature. It's really great, not long at all. Really condensed storytelling with a lot of twists, particularly packed in the back third of it, which is what I read over the last couple days. Really, really great book that I it was shocked how much I enjoyed it. I really thought it was going to be quite dry, but gosh, it was fantastic. So if you don't know the story of The Great Gatsby, you really ought to read it because it's a very interesting story that has a lot of interesting sort of things to say about the American society. Obviously, it was written in the 20s, but and now here we are, 100 years later. It's actually set literally 100 years before today. It was set in 1925, and it still kind of resonates some of the themes there. So really great book. Really enjoyed that experience, and we'll see what I come up with in 2026. I'm looking forward to finding out. Let's move on to the movies that I watched in 2025. And it was a pretty big year for me for movie watching, too. I'm not a huge movie goer. I think I've probably talked about this on last year's episode of the podcast. I did take like one film class in college, which was kind of miserable, but I did watch a lot of good movies. And so other than that, I mostly just kind of watched kids movies when I was a kid, and haven't really watched a whole lot of adult movies. And I have a mix of classic films here and um, child films, quite frankly, because that's sort of what Reagan and I have in our shared history is for movies that we watch. And so, but it's an interesting lineup that I'm gonna go through here today. So it's 39 movies that I watched this year, 10 of which were new to me. So starting off was Unforgiven, the 1992 sort of more modern Western. Really, really great film. One of my favorites. And I haven't seen too many Westerns, but wow, it's a fantastic movie with Clint Eastwood. I definitely recommend it. Then I watched on January 10th and January 21st, Reagan and I watched the Batman Begins and the Dark Knight, which are obviously the major Batman movies from the 2000s. I still to this day have never seen The Dark Knight Rises, and I can't believe it's been already like basically a year since I watched The Dark Knight, and I still haven't done it. But it's on my list. I really need to just watch it just so I can say that I've seen the whole trilogy. But maybe we'll get around to that someday soon. First new movie I watched this year for me was Encanto, the 2021 film. I watched that on January 25th. Reagan had picked that and just wanted me to see it for some reason. It was a good film. It's definitely a solid, honestly, I would say probably solid B tier, um, Disney movie. But obviously they're capable of a lot better. But if in terms of like modern Disney movies, it's definitely a lot better than you know, I would say the kind of the going rate of Disney movies today. So that was fun. Really great music in it by Lin-Manuel Miranda. So then on February 17th, we watched Wall-E, one of my favorite films of all time, and just a absolute classic in my opinion. Then on February 18th, we watched A Few Good Men. I can't believe it's already been almost a year since we watched A Few Good Men, but that was fun. That's the kind of famous Tom Cruise movie where he's the lawyer and he has to go up against Jack Nicholson is the kind of corrupt army general. Really, really great sort of courtroom drama. So thoroughly enjoyed that. Reagan had never seen it before. Then on February 21st, we watched Bonnie and Clyde from 1967. That was interesting. I remember I'd only seen that once before, and that was in the film class. Honestly, I remember the film class just being amazed by it. This time, it definitely was a little didn't quite live up to what I had remembered about it, but it's still a great film, no doubt. And then we started. We decided had this idea to just watch all the Pixar films in order, skipping Wall-E since we had just watched that earlier this year. And so we started that on February 23rd with Toy Story, and then went on to Bug's Life and March 7th. Obviously, these are very formative films for me. I was a huge fan of both as a kid. Toy Story came out when I was 1 year old. A Bug's Life came out when I was four. A Bug's Life in particular was my favorite at that time. I was so into A Bug's Life. I had the PlayStation 1 game that went along with the film that it was kind of like what got me into gaming. And then also I just watched that movie over and over again. So that was really fun. Second new movie I saw this year to me was 2023's Oppenheimer. I'd never seen Oppenheimer. I missed it when it came out in theaters. I was not part of the Barbenheimer, uh, experience, I guess. I have now seen both of them, but yes, Oppenheimer. I actually watched it on a flight. I think it's the first movie I ever watched on a flight. And I watched it on a flight to New York when I was traveling for work in April. And wow, what an experience! What an incredible film! Definitely one of my favorite films that I've ever seen. Just so long, but so rich in its storytelling and drama. So really loved that. I actually watched it twice this year because later on I watched it with Reagan and she absolutely loved it too. On May 4th, I watched Breathless, which is kind of like this classic French film by from Jean-Luc Godard, or however you want to say it. Um, Kind of, I think it's the French New Wave is what they call it. Anyway, it's a movie that we watched in the film class. I was kind of revisiting these movies that I watched in the film class because I took that class in early 2013, so it's been over a decade since I saw these films, and I wanted to kind of catch up on them and see what are generally considered to be some of the best movies of all time. So I watched Breathless. It is a great film. It's not a masterpiece or anything, but it is solid. And then later that day, I watched The Public Enemy, also on May 4th, which is another one that I watched that film class. I would say that one's even less good than Breathless, but still a very good film. A good, really like that's from the 30s, so really old school. But it does have full voiceovers and kind of a gangster film from that time. So it doesn't really stick with me like some of the other films that I watched in that class, but even the films that I watched this year, but definitely solid. On May 27th, we watched Rogue One, a Star Wars story, which is my favorite Star Wars film. I think we had finished watching Andor, and then we that's why we did that. I think specifically with Brandon, when my brother Brandon was coming over, he hadn't watched all of Andor yet, and so we watched Rogue One once we finished Andor, which you just kind of have to do to get the full experience. June 22nd, we watched The Graduate, which was the first film I actually saw in the film class, and that was the first time Reagan had ever seen it. She didn't know that was where it kind of became a meme for the Sound of Silence from Simon and Garfunkel. Um, so that was a fun experience, and particularly seeing it with her since she didn't know what was going to happen. It's definitely a classic. It's gotten a little old for me because I have seen it a few times, but still a really great film. Then on June 29th, Reagan showed me The Perks of Being a Wallflower from 2012, which I had never seen. Really impressive film. I really actually enjoyed it. I did not see the twist coming, which is always cool. And yeah, I'd never seen that before. So that was a fun experience. We watched Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2 on July 16th, which was kind of random. We had watched all the Harry Potter movies. So Reagan grew up a massive Harry Potter fan, and I grew up a pretty big Harry Potter fan too. Read all the books and everything. And we honeymooned in Universal and also Disney World, and late 2023 or early 2024. And so my plan was to watch all the Harry Potter movies leading up to that. I did read all the books in 2023. We watched most of the movies in 2023, but we didn't actually get around to watching Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, and so we finally just did it on July 16th. And it's solid. My opinion of the Harry Potter movies has definitely sort of dimmed over the years. I definitely think the books are awesome. I still think they're really great, but the the movies, some are better than others for sure. And Deathly Hallows Part Two, it's good, but neither of the Deathly Hallows movies really live up to the quality of the book, I would say. So, yeah, solid movie, but I saw plenty of better ones this year. July 19th, we watched Lilo and Stitch, which is another one that is I remember from my childhood, but Reagan really grew up loving Lilo and Stitch. It came out in 2002, so I was 8 and she was probably 4 when she saw it for the first time or when it came out anyway. And it actually surprised me how well it held up. It's definitely a movie that I've seen a lot, but I hadn't seen it in a long time. And so that was kind of cool to go back and see that. And I was like I said, I was really pleasantly surprised by how much I liked it. It's a really, really great movie. On July 21st, we started the Pirates of the Caribbean movies to because Reagan had never seen them, so I was like, we ought to watch the first three Pirates of the Caribbean movies. This was kind of inspired by we're big villainous players, and we talked about that on the podcast. But they were coming out with the Davy Jones um, box where you're going to be able to play as Davy Jones, and I was like, you really ought to see those movies since you've never seen them. So that was fun. Just July 21st, we watched that. July 22nd, we watched the second one, A Dead Man's Chest. July 24th, we watched At World's End. It's fun to watch those movies. I've actually never seen any of the ones after that. I've just kind of called it quits after the trilogy. It feels like a definitive end. It seems like it was intended as a definitive end, and then they just sort of decided to milk it as a franchise. Maybe I'll go and check out the other ones someday. I don't know if I'm a big enough fan of the series to really get that invested in beyond three movies, but I really like all three of them. I definitely watched The Curse of the Black Pearl way more than the other two. I actually owned it on DVD when I was a kid. It's one of the first DVDs I had. So I watched it quite a bit, and I like it. It definitely has a very different tone than Dead Man's Chest and At World's End, where it's a lot more grounded than those movies are. But that said, I really enjoy the drama of the storytelling and kind of the depth of the storytelling. I really love the villain of Davy Jones and just kind of what they did with his backstory and sort of how they filled that in with Dead Man's Chest and At World's End. Really, really great films, I think. Underrated, maybe. It's obviously very well received by audiences and very huge commercial successes, but not generally considered great films, I think, and sort of just like the critical space. But I really like those quite a bit. I think I might actually like At World's End the best of the three. I thought went in expecting to like Dead Man's Chest the best, and there is some good stuff in there. I really love the Kraken. But at World's End, I was surprised. That's where a lot of the depth, where you learn a lot of the depth of Davy Jones, and it's kind of got this story of corruption and everything there that I really like a lot. So, yeah, I enjoyed that little marathon there. In the middle, on July 22nd, we watched Lilo and Stitch 2: Stitch Has a Glitch, which was a straight-to-video sequel to Lilo and Stitch, much worse than the actual the original Lilo and Stitch. It definitely shows that it was a straight to video movie. I had never seen it before, but Reagan wanted me to see it, and then she ended up after we watched it, she was like, "Yeah, it definitely didn't hold up as much as I was hoping." And then she also on August 30th, she had me. It was her turn to pick another movie, and she picked unfortunately the Lego Movie from 2014, which I had never seen. Obviously, I've heard great things about the Lego Movie. I am baffled that I have heard great things about the Lego Movie. To me, it was just like basically an entire miss. I could probably count on one hand the number of times I laughed watching that movie, which is not good because that's what they're kind of banking on. And so I really did not enjoy that movie much at all. But yeah, I watched it on August 30th. On October 2nd, had an intense viewing experience when I watched Come and See, the 1985 World War II movie from, God, I can't remember who or like what nationality the nationality is of that film, but it's a foreign film and you have to watch it with subtitles. I actually watched it for free on YouTube. It was available for free on YouTube, which was really crazy. This is a film that I knew about because I had just watched like some video essays about it, about how it's this one video essay which I don't even know if I can find it again, but it's a really good video essay. It's kind of talking about just how it's like the scariest film ever made, which even though it's not really a horror film, but it is documenting some, horrors that really happened during World War II. And it is an intense viewing experience. I don't recommend it for the faint of heart at all. It is dark as it comes when it comes to storytelling, but really, really great and almost like a documentary in a way because it's obviously not. It's a film. It's a fictional film, but it is absolutely based on real events, and definitely touches on real horrors that actually happened. And so, Wow, a really, really powerful movie. On October 4th, I was really enjoy this. I watched Alien for the first time, the original Alien. Um, that was a really cool experience because I'd never seen Alien, but I've always heard about how influential it was. And I finally got to just sit down and watch it for myself, and it was immediately apparent how much uh, things I've experienced in that have come out since 1979 were clearly influenced by Alien. The one that goes pops to mind like most clearly is the Metroid series from Nintendo. But there's so much other stuff that is clearly inspired by Alien. It's like basically almost anything in space at this point where they kind of try to have a creepy tone was clearly influenced by that. And just like the way that they did the technology and everything in Alien was clearly very inspirational. You could see it all the way even like for what they're showing for the new Naughty Dog space film, like the way that everything's kind of analog is, and I love that. I love that aesthetic. I loved the film. It's kind of hard to say, it definitely is like a classic. It's hard to like put it up against something like Come and See, which is like obviously a much more sort of riveting and important film. But Alien is like kind of a more fun film to watch, and it's also just fun to see how influential it was. But there was like a major twist in the story that I didn't see coming, and it just I think the way that it builds tension is sort of unmatched, and really fun to see. I really like how they kind of utilize that strategy of like not letting you see the thing that is out to get you, and like that kind of creates tension. So really really enjoyed that. That was fun to finally see that. October 5th, I watched Johnny Guitar, the 1954 western, and it's really interesting because this is like a on first watch it's not like a really spectacular film, but it's sort of held up by critics as like this kind of monumental, very important film. And I can't even really tell you why, but you can look up a lot of video essays about it, and they can put it a lot more eloquently than I can. But for me, I always just found it to be a very entertaining film. It was one that I watched sort of attached to the film class. We weren't shown it in the film class, but there were a couple of projects where we had to pick a film from a list and like write an essay on it. And I did that for Johnny Guitar. And I was always drawn to it just because obviously if you've played Fallout New Vegas, you would know it's that uses the main theme quite often on the radio station there. And so like seeing it in its like original context is cool. But it's a fun film. It's an interesting watch. If you like westerns, you should probably see it. Uh, on later in October, I actually didn't write down the date for this one, but later in October, Reagan and I watched Chinatown. She had never seen Chinatown. I'd watched it again last year, which was the first time I'd seen it since the film class. And I remember the film class just being absolutely blown away by it. And even still, I'm pretty blown away by it. I think it's one of the best films I've ever seen. And Reagan came in knowing nothing, which was really fun to just see her sort of try to piece things together because it is like a mystery, right? An investigative mystery. So really enjoyed that experience watching that with her. It's an absolutely fantastic film. If you haven't seen it, you absolutely should. And then on October 31st, on Halloween, we actually watched The Wizard of Oz, which she wanted me to see it because Wicked for Good was coming out this year. Reagan is an absolutely massive, probably the biggest I've ever seen Wicked fan. And obviously, I watched Wicked last year, the first Wicked, but um, I'd never seen like the stage play or anything like that. So I was new to that story, but of course I've seen The Wizard of Oz, but I hadn't seen it in a while, and it's because Wicked for Good sort of takes place concurrently with it. She wanted me to have it fresh in my mind, so we did watch The Wizard of Oz. Really, I've never been a big fan of The Wizard of Oz. I still am not a big fan of The Wizard of Oz. There's things about it that I understand, like for its time, it was kind of revolutionary in terms of its use of color, and it had that iconic song that the girl sings about over the rainbow or whatever. So that's all fine, but I definitely I sort of respect it more than I like it, but even my respect for it is limited, I guess is a good way to sort of sum up how I feel about The Wizard of Oz. On November 1st, I watched Deliver Me from Nowhere. So I went to the theater to see that. This is one of the two 2025 films I watched this year. This was the Bruce Springsteen biopic. Obviously, I'm a massive Bruce Springsteen fan. If you know anything about me, you know that. But it was me, my wife Reagan, and my cousin Brett all went to the theater to see it, and that was actually well, there was another movie I saw in theaters later on, but yeah, those are my two theater experiences in 2025. Maybe I'll have a few more in 2026. I enjoy going to the theater. I haven't been doing it so much lately, but actually, the theater here in the town that I live in just closed down. so I have to go to another town to go to the theater anymore. But it is fun to do that sometimes. So maybe I'll do that a little bit more often next year. But yeah, Deliver Me from Nowhere, really fantastic film, especially if you're a fan of Bruce Springsteen. Like you really need to see it. It's kind of a unique film. It's definitely a character study. And it's not sort of like this, hey, look at how great Bruce Springsteen is sort of story like a lot of the biopics are. It's really focuses on a period of Great Depression in his life and his sort of struggles to make this album called Nebraska, which he made in 1982. That was a huge departure from the music that he made before that and also after, because he was really about to hit it big with Born in the USA. It was the album that he did after Nebraska, which is definitely his biggest commercial success. But yeah, it's a fantastic character study, really psychological film, surprisingly psychological. And if you're a fan of Bruce Springsteen or if you're a fan of psychology, I recommend that you check it out. Okay, so then we continued our Pixar marathon. Obviously, as you can tell, we kind of took a break from our Pixar period from March when we watched A Bug's Life, but we really hit it pretty hard here in November. So November 7th through the 8th, we watched four Pixar films in a row. So that was the next four they did: Toy Story 2, Monsters Inc., Finding Nemo, The Incredibles. Really interesting experience. Like obviously, these are all films I watched when I was a child. Toy Story 2, I probably, well, definitely have seen the most out of these, and it's also the one that I would put the lowest in terms of ranking them. And I will make a list, a formalized list ranking the Pixar films, which we've seen them all, of course. But they all hold up to a degree. But Toy Story 2, I think, it's not as ambitious with its storytelling, but still a fun film, very funny. And then Monsters Inc. of course is a classic. Finding Nemo, I was really, it's held up as to so well. I always kind of felt like it was a little overrated, but man, it really did kind of hit for me this time watching it. It's been a while since I've seen it, so I was impressed by it. And then The Incredibles are it's just a fantastic movie. It's like it's crazy how Pixar just made one of the greatest superhero movies ever without pulling from like anything that already existed. They didn't have the Marvel license, they didn't have the DC license. They just made some stuff up and it was like so unbelievably great. Like way better than 90% of the superhero, maybe even 95% of the superhero movies that you can see that are so popular these days. So that was a refreshing experience. November 11th, I watched Citizen Kane with Reagan. That was really fun to kind of see if she could figure out the whole Rosebud thing. Obviously, a great character study, one of the great all-time great character studies, one of the all-time great films. And it's a classic. November 12th, we watched Cars. November 14th, we watched Ratatouille, and that's the last Pixar movie that we've seen in our little marathon. Yeah, Ratatouille's always held up as a really great film, but I've only seen it a couple times. This is the second time I've seen it. I'm not super impressed with Ratatouille. I think the ending is phenomenal. And I think that's what people remember when they think Ratatouille is a really great movie. It's kind of like the reverse of Up, where it's like the beginning they remember as being fantastic. And then they sort of ascribe that to the whole film. I think it's okay, but definitely the worst of the Pixar movies that I've seen up to this point. And then we have The Incredibles. I'm sorry, Cars, which I've always thought was an underrated Disney movie, commercially, or not commercially, but critically. It seems like it's always kind of been looked down on the Cars franchise, and I think that is warranted for the sequels. And they definitely did too much with Cars, but I've always thought that first Cars movie was really well done, so I enjoyed that. Then November 17th, I watched the first Wicked again at Reagan's request from 2024. Solid film. Definitely better than The Wizard of Oz. I will say that. I My problem, and I've kind of tried to explain this to Reagan. I don't really think. I think that I think the storytelling, particularly the character writing, I guess, is clunky and Wicked, and maybe part of that is because it's a stage play, and maybe the standard isn't as high for a stage play as it is for a film. But there's kind of an incoherence to the characters that I can't really get past with Wicked, and that did continue for Wicked for Good. And that's my biggest problem with that story. I think on paper, I think it's a great idea. I love sort of villain origin stories. With Wicked, they kind of took it in a different direction where it's like she's not really the villain, is the idea, which I don't like as much. I'd rather she just be a villain, quite frankly. But it's fine. It's a good movie. It's a good sort of series, I guess. It's a good, all it's good. I don't see, I get nothing, nowhere near as much out of it as Reagan does. November 22nd, this was a surprise for me. I finally watched Die Hard. I've never seen Die Hard before. I always figured it was just a dumb 80s movie, which is basically exactly what it is. However, it is a fun, dumb 80s movie. I was surprised by how much I enjoyed it. A lot of that is just the performances. It was really fun to see Alan Rickman in that because he's just like a really great antagonist. And so seeing him in that context was very fun, obviously, as a growing up as a Harry Potter fan. And really just like I said, a dumb movie, but really, really well done. I was impressed. Like hard, you can't really beat that. Like for that style of film, it's like basically as good as it gets. So I did actually get a kick out of that. December 9th, I watched It's a Wonderful Life. I pretty much watch It's a Wonderful Life every year because it's like my mom's favorite movie. And so we always kind of end up watching it. And it's a masterpiece. Even this time I was like, okay, I've seen this movie so many times. I'm sick of It's a Wonderful Life, but it always somehow manages to draw me in, and that's just because it's just an amazing piece of filmmaking. So it's a classic, and everybody should see it. And then the most recent film I watched on December 13th was Wicked for Good. And I was really curious where I was going to come down on this because I was like, am I going to like it better than the first one? Generally, I kind of like the endings to series more than the beginnings because it's where you get the payoff. And I was really looking forward to seeing Elphaba's kind of like in her villain arc, which didn't end up really happening, which was a little bit disappointing. I think maybe it edges out the first one. I didn't think it would. But I did like that there's kind of a twist at the ending that I didn't see coming that worked for me. It really helped actually because I was like, boy, this is really contrived. Some of the drama in it, and then the ending it kind of made it where I was like, all right, well, that at least kind of makes it more palatable, I guess. What happened here? So I'm not spoiling it intentionally for people who haven't seen it. But and ultimately, I feel similarly about that film as I feel about the first Wicked, where I think the characters are just not super tightly written. And I think that's my problem with it. It's just there's just some inconsistencies with the psychology of those characters that I can't quite buy into and suspend my disbelief for. And so that's like I said, still solid movies, but nowhere near my favorites that I saw this year. That's it for the movies that I watch in 25. So that 2025. So that just leaves the games that I played in 2025. And I mentioned that it was kind of a down year for me for video games. But I do want to talk about the games I played, and I'm also going to go through the platinum trophies that I earned this year, which are like all focused in all we're all in the first half of the year. But I thought it might be fun to do the PlayStation Wrapped to sort of do my wrap up there, since that's definitely where I spend the majority of my gaming time on the PlayStation. And I mentioned we'll see exactly how much of that is the case because it's going to tell me how many hours I spent versus the hours that I came up with through my own um, counting. So, yes, it says that in 2025 on my PlayStation 5, it says I played 29 games, 17 PS5 games, 12 PS4 games. My top five were, so starting for number five, it was actually Ghost of Tsushima Director's Cut, which I spent 28 hours on. I'd played Ghost of Tsushima before I played it when it came out in 2020, but I hadn't played it since and I had never done the DLC and all that, and I'd never played the PS5 version, which is what the director's cut is, and so that was cool. So 28 hours, 43 trophies in that, and 4% of my playtime. Also, Fallout 4 is basically the same. At 28 hours, 15 trophies, and 4% of my playtime. I did start a Fallout 4 playthrough whenever I was like really into Fallout in like the fall, and I didn't actually get too deep into that playthrough. I mean, I guess I did to a degree because it says I spent 28 hours on it. But yeah, I had started a survival mode playthrough, which was fun, but kind of ended up leaving it behind. I don't know if I'm gonna get back to that anytime soon. But yeah, Fallout 4. I've spent a lot of time with it, so it's hard for it to really sort of to motivate myself to spend too much more time with it. Number three was Hades, which I spent 89 hours playing this year. Spent a lot of time with Hades. 14% of my playtime and 45 trophies. I got the platinum trophy in Hades. I guess I'm just trying to save the platinum trophy thing, but yeah, basically that's why played so much of it. It was definitely the first part of the year, and I had a lot of fun with it. I had of course played it when it came out in 2020 on the Switch, but yeah, it's an amazing game, no doubt. Number two was Mass Effect Legendary Edition. 129 hours spent in that game. 20% of my playtime. Zero trophies because I already have the platinum trophies in all of those games. But uh, my brother Brandon and my cousin Brett, neither of them have had played through the Mass Effect games, and I decided that we should, if they kind of basically decided they weren't going to do it, and I was like, you guys should just come over. We should play them together. So with Brandon, we went through all of them. With Brett, we've only gone through Mass Effect 1. And so that 129 hours is basically accounting for four games. It's Mass Effect 1 twice, and then Mass Effect 2 and Mass Effect 3. So that was an amazing experience. Being able to share that with them kind of reminded me of when we were kids and we used to play games like that. And so that was cool. And then my number one, as embarrassing as it is The Elder Scrolls V Skyrim. 21% of my playtime, 134 hours. I had a playthrough going at one point this year, and I had another playthrough with Reagan going this year. My playthrough with Reagan was kind of fun because obviously Reagan doesn't had never played Skyrim before, and so like it was fun to like sort of see her reactions to things. And also it was the first time I actually finished the main story in Skyrim in many years. So that was kind of cool. And we still have plenty of stuff that we can do in that, so we'll probably go back to it next year too. That'll probably make up a portion of our playtime next year. So really enjoyed my time with Skyrim this year, I have to say. Now PlayStation is wanting me to sign in again. God, the PlayStation website is so ass. Anyway, let's move on. It says that my gaming style is the thrill seeker with action adventures. It says I spent 46% of my time exploring worlds and conquering challenges that made every adventure unforgettable. I suppose so. Here we go. So on my PlayStation 5, I spent 626 hours on the PlayStation. And remember, I spent 849 hours total playing video games. I guess I should mention that that time is not counting the Jackbox games because I have spent even more time if you count the time I spent playing Jackbox games with family. But I guess I just don't really count that just because it feels. I mean, they definitely are video games, and the Switch counts them as such. But I don't know. I guess I just haven't been able to motivate myself to like have my timer going when I have those going. Maybe part of that's because I'm using my phone obviously to play Jackbox. But anyway, it's not counting that. But obviously the lion's share on my PlayStation, but I did get an okay amount of time in with the Switch and this year. Obviously, the Switch 2 came out this year, and I do have that, but I haven't really spent anywhere near as much time as I expected to with it. And then lately, my brother and I have been playing the Halo series on my Xbox Series X, which is like basically the only use that it's gotten this year. Well, that's not true because Reagan and I were playing Fallout New Vegas on it. I didn't finish Fallout New Vegas this year, so it's not on the list. But Reagan and I I actually had a couple playthroughs going, so but yeah, 626 hours on the PS5. It says 622 on the PS4 itself, or on the PS5 itself, which is interesting. I guess that means that 4 hours were on a PS4. Um, and then on my Portal, I do have a PlayStation Portal. Oh, well, here on the PS5, 622 hours, 319 sessions, 29 games played. On the PlayStation Portal, I spent 31 hours, which I guess is probably mostly Wingspan. I can't remember much else that I played on the Portal this year, but actually I have it charging upstairs right now. That's across 34 sessions and 7 games played. And then I actually did buy PlayStation VR 2 this year. I've only spent 7 hours with it so far across 20 play sessions and 2 games played. So I haven't gotten anywhere near as much out of it as I need to. It's only a few months ago that I bought it, and I've taken a little bit of a hiatus for it. It's a little bit of a pain to set up, obviously, and then also it's very stressful for me because I feel like I got it used and I like keeping the lenses clean and everything and keeping everything like balanced on the face and all that stuff is just kind of a lot of work, and obviously it's a lot of work to play the games too. And then like there's kind of some funkiness going on with the controllers, I feel, which I've looked up, and it seems like other people have had that problem too, where it's like they don't really want to connect or register that they're connected when you start up a game, and you kind of have to like spend some time like reconnecting them and all that. So anyway, I just haven't had like time for longer video game sessions, and that's kind of what I feel like I need to really dive into a VR2 game. And so I haven't really had a whole lot of time to do that, but I'm hoping that in 2026 I'll dive into VR2 a lot more. I've definitely been looking up at a lot of great games that I can play for it. So um, yeah, that's something that I definitely need to do more. My favorite controller of 2025 was the 30th anniversary limited edition that I got, I guess, at the beginning of this year. And yeah, that's pretty much the only controller that I use. So that makes sense. It's trying to sell me some games here. Says I've been a PS Plus member for 10.1 years. That's definitely not true because I've let that um, subscription lapse many times. I did just re-up for the, I got a discount on the Black Friday thing, so I'm just a essential member right now, but I might go up to extra or premium later on in the year once it's more affordable to do that as they prorate me. It says I played 8 PS Plus games this year, so obviously I didn't get a whole lot out of it for the limited amount of time that I was subscribed. But anyway, yeah. And then trophies. So I guess we can go ahead and do the trophies here. In 2025, I earned 275 trophies. And that includes 7 platinum trophies, 28 gold, 54 silver, and 186 bronze. It says my trophy level increased 10 levels. So yeah, that's true. It doesn't actually like list out the platinum trophies that I got, but luckily, of course, I listed them myself. So let's take a look at that. So it says 7 platinum trophies this year. 6 of them were really new. Because one of the platinum trophies was Ghost of Tsushima director's cut. I got that. So it's basically a duplicate platinum because I had obviously a platinum Ghost of Tsushima when it came out on the PS4 in 2020. So that one is like, I mean, it counts. Obviously it counts on my platinum total, but it's not really, it doesn't morally count in a way since it's a game that already had platinum. But to be fair, I also got the trophies in the DLC, which I'd never done before. So that was fun. But for the 6 games that I actually platinumed in terms of new games that I didn't have the platinums in before. On February 5th, I platinumed Star Wars Battlefront 2, which was actually, and this is the 2017 game that was much maligned at the time and then had a sort of resurgence in popularity and success. That was really fun. I've actually found surprisingly, multiplayer trophies are maligned by the trophy hunter um, community. But I actually find that they are some of the more satisfying trophies to get, like when you actually pull it off, because you are dealing with unknown variables. And some of my favorite trophy popping moments were with Star Wars Battlefront 2, like getting the first kill on a level, or finally completing like this really tough trophy that I had to get doing the space battles. Was like that was a huge moment. Basically, I think it was like I had to kill 15 hero ships with just like regular fighters. And I actually ended up killing more than that because I realized that it has to be specifically a fighter class, and so there was a few ships that I killed that didn't even count, which was annoying. But like finally getting that trophy popped was like super satisfying. So anyway, I really enjoyed platinuming Star Wars Battlefront 2. It just case we made that it's the game I enjoyed platinuming the most this year. Definitely gave me the most memorable moments when I did that. On February 19th, I platinumed Wingspan, which is a digital version of the very famous card game, board game, which is something that Reagan's family really got into last year. And that was cool. I enjoy playing Wingspan. It's not like my favorite game in the world. I'm definitely kind of sick of it. I don't like it as much as Villainous, for instance. But for like an introductory card game that basically anybody can play and enjoy, I think it's fun. It's good. It's a good family game. And getting the platinum trophy is actually no joke on the PS5. So that definitely took some work. And I still don't have 100% because some of the sort of quote unquote DLC trophies are really tough. And then they added a whole nother DLC pack this year. So that kind of set that back to square zero anyway. Even I didn't have 100% before that anyway, so it didn't really matter. But getting the platinum trophy was satisfying. I am in the first 50 platinum trophy earners on PSN profiles, and we now have more than 50. Yeah, I'm basically ensconced myself on that list, which I always think is satisfying. On March 17th, I platinumed Hades 1. That was a really awesome experience. I actually just got my first Christmas gift today that I opened. I didn't actually mean to open it early, but I sort of opened it by accident. But it is Hades 2 for the Switch 2, which is really exciting. Reagan got me that for my birthday, which is very sweet. And I'll definitely be checking that out, hopefully very soon. But yeah, Hades 1 obviously is a one. It's just an amazing game. That's all there is to it. Getting the platinum was extremely fun experience. And I'm sure that I will get the platinum trophy in Hades 2 at some point, but they're gonna have to put it on PS5 first is the only thing. And so, I wish they would have just put it on there immediately, but that's not what happened. March 24th, I platinumed The Last of Us Part 1, and this is the PS5 version of The Last of Us Part 1 that's super overpriced, and I absolutely did not pay for it. Whenever I was briefly on the premium subscription, I just did it while I was on there. But before that lapsed. Really fun game. Obviously, The Last of Us is a masterpiece. It's one of my favorite games of all time. Playing it on PS5, the fancy PS5 version was fun. I really don't think it's worth anywhere near the amount of money that they asked for it, especially when the PS4 version, which is also fantastic, is already available on the console. If you are listening to this and you're on the fence, should I play The Last of Us? The answer is yes. You should definitely not spend anywhere near $60 to or $70 rather. That's what they're selling it for, my lord. To do that, you can just be have a perfectly amazing experience playing the PS4 version, which you can get full price for like $20 on the PlayStation Store, or probably cheaper than that if you just find a physical copy somewhere. So that's what I recommend. But it was fun to actually get the platinum trophy in The Last of Us because I don't have the platinum trophy in the PS4 version. I guess if you're a platinum hunter, I will say the PS5 version is a lot easier to platinum because there's no multiplayer aspect. I actually do want to go and do the multiplayer aspect of The Last of Us. I've heard it's pretty good. And get the actual the PS4 platinum, which by the way also requires you to beat the game twice on the hardest, well, not the hardest difficulty because they added a grounded difficulty that you don't actually have to do for the platinum, but the survival difficulty, I think is what it's called. So it's basically the difficulty above hard, and it is tough to beat that way. So that's another thing that you don't have to deal with. There's no difficulty trophies for The Last of Us Part 1, the PS5 version. So yeah, it's an easy platinum trophy, but it was one that I enjoyed doing. Nowhere near worth $70 though. And then the final two games that I platinumed this year were both in April, and these were games that I had never played before. April 2nd, I platinumed Kena Bridge of Spirits, which was a pretty rough experience. The game itself I liked fine. It was pretty underwhelming, I have to say. And part of the reason that I found it underwhelming might have been because I was going for the platinum trophy and therefore I had to play it on the hardest difficulty. And that game is just not well balanced on the hardest difficulty at all. And it's just like not the best way to play that game to enjoy it, I guess, which is a shame. I think that's a mistake. If that's the case, then you shouldn't make that a requirement for your platinum trophy. For me, the philosophy for trophy hunting is you should try to get players to experience everything that your game has to offer. Um, and I think it's okay to even do difficulty ones as long as the difficulty is well balanced. I think, like for instance, The Last of Us One on the PS4. I think that it's worth it to do the survival difficulty because it's not ridiculous. It's not like impossible to get through the game that way, which obviously wasn't impossible for me to do Kane Bridge of Spirits either. But The Last of Us is kind of more already kind of geared. It's like a horror game, so it's already kind of meant for you to sort of struggle at times, and so it just kind of goes with the tone of that game. Whereas Kane Bridge of Spirits just feels like it's just supposed to be like this fun little action game for children, and then here you are like approaching every battle like you can get hit like twice and you're dead, and so that was a little bit frustrating. I got through it though, and it was fine. It just wasn't a super polished difficulty, playing it on the hardest difficulty, I have to say. And then it also just didn't really have a whole lot to it. Like a very pretty game, but there wasn't a whole lot of depth to it. That they kind of want you to care about the characters, and that was a total flop for me. And then the art style's great, like I said, but there's not a whole lot to the gameplay. I felt there wasn't a lot of depth there. So anyway, that was a little bit of a miss. And then April 11th, I platinumed Animal Well, which is the kind of Metroidvania sort of game, except for very like no combat, which is definitely unique for that style of game. Like sort of like the opposite of Blasphemous, which is a really great game in that style that I played a few years ago. So a lot more on the puzzles and exploration element, which it does very well. I don't like Animal Well as much as most, if not all, of the other Metroidvanias that I've played. Like, if you're comparing it to like the Ori series, or you're gonna compare it to the Metroid series, or compared to Blasphemous, like I definitely don't like it as much as any of those games. But I do. There's a lot of cool stuff in there. It goes really deep. That sort of like rabbit hole that you go into in terms of like trying to get the platinum trophy. there's stuff in there that's like so deep that you'd never be able to figure it out without looking stuff up, which is fine. I don't mind playing with the walkthrough, but if you don't like doing that, then yeah, I could see it being kind of a frustrating experience. But if you're not above like looking stuff up, then it can be pretty fun. And so I definitely liked it a lot more than Kena Bridge of Spirits for sure. And it was I would say it was a good game. It was a really good game, not like really great game, not like I was seeing it getting like really like 9+ scores, and I definitely wouldn't be anywhere near in that tier. I'd say maybe like an 8.25, solid 8.25 for Animal. I think it was a really fun game, but also frustrating at times. But yeah, those are the games that I platinum this year. Didn't platinum anything after April 11th with Animal Well, so like I said, my gaming really kind of fell off this year compared to other years, but still, 7 platinum trophies on the year. It's nothing to sneeze at, I feel, for me anyway. And like I said, I have 46 platinum trophies in total now. So maybe next year will be the year I get to the big 5-0. We'll see. But I guess the last thing here is just sort of looking at the my list of the games that I finished this year, which like I said is not super long. Let's see here. Video games I finished in 2025. It's only a measly 18 games, and only 5 of them are new to me. So, oh man, not a really good year for me in terms of experiencing new things, broadening my horizons with my video games. But let's go through them here quickly. At the beginning of the year, I finished Spyro Year of the Dragon, is because Reagan and I, which is like my all-time childhood game. That was because Reagan and I were playing through the Spyro games at the end of last year. Well, just kind of throughout last year because she'd never played them before, and so she was playing the remastered version on PS5, and then I was playing the original versions on PS1. I was actually playing on a PS3, but you can just put the discs in and play them that way. That's how I was doing it, and so it was kind of fun experience to like see her experience those games for the first time. And she actually did 100% 2 and 3. She didn't do all the flight levels in the first game, so she didn't 100% that one. But seeing her like overcome those challenges was like really cool, and then she was able to see like kind of what the games are like from when I was a kid, and we both agreed that at least when it came to Spyro 2 and 3, the original versions are better than the remastered version. So it's kind of satisfying to have her agree with me on that. So yes, there was that. On January 24th, I played Halo 3 ODST co-op with my cousin Brett. That was fun. That was a fun evening. We just did it all in one night. January 25th was whenever I finished Hades, got credits on Hades. Obviously, it was a couple months later before I finally platinumed it, but yeah, in terms of like the main story of Hades, that was when I finished it. February 2nd Ghost was when I did Ghost of Tsushima, so again, it was a little bit later when I platinumed it. Well, not really. I think I platinumed it on February 3rd or something like that. So but yeah, that was when I finished the main story of that. February 22nd was the first new game for me, and as you're going to hear, not exactly a barn burner of a new game. This is Final Fantasy 15: A King's Tale, which is like a 1 hour little brawler that they made. That's like sort of like the King Regis sort of telling Noctis whenever it's like a bedtime story. He's telling Noctis about this time that he and his buddies like went on a little journey to kill Ultros from Final Fantasy VI. It is absolutely ridiculous, but a delight for Final Fantasy fans, and it was fun actually. And I don't really play brawlers like that, so that was kind of a unique experience. But yeah, it's pretty rough that is one of the five games that I played that I'd ever played before this year. March 24th was The Last of Us Part 1. I mentioned I got the platinum in that. April 2nd was Kena Bridge of Spirits. April 10th was Animal Well. So those are all ones that we've discussed. June 9th, I finished Mass Effect 1. Like I mentioned, I was playing through those with my brother and my cousin Brett this year. So, I finished Mass Effect 1 twice, but June 9th was when I finished it with Brandon. July 6th, boy, did I do the bare minimum on this game, but I did get credits on Mario Kart World on the Nintendo Switch 2, which I did not spend $80 for. The only reason I had Mario Kart World was because I bought the bundle that came with it. But since I had it, of course I did play it, and boy, it was okay. It's a good game. Objectively, it is a good game, but man, compared to Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, I don't think it's anywhere near that. I wouldn't even put it above like Mario Kart Double Dash that I played when I was a kid. It's just a pretty underwhelming game, especially considering the price that they're charging for, and it's a really good example of greedy Nintendo rearing its head again. But I did play it. Obviously, it's got some good track design. It's got some pretty lame track design as well, as people have discussed. But at least Rainbow Road was cool. So July 6th, I finished that. September 1st, finished Mass Effect 2. September 3rd, finished Skyrim, which was the like I said, the first time in years that I actually finished the main story of Skyrim. September 14th, I finished Yu-Gi-Oh! The Duelist of the Roses on PlayStation 2. I will never stop beating the drum about this game. I think I talked about it whenever I did my most underrated video games, but man, I just absolutely love that game. Every few years, I go back to it on the PlayStation 2. It's never been ported to any other modern consoles, and it's just a really great turn-based strategy game with a Yu-Gi-Oh sort of cover or like a Yu-Gi-Oh coat of paint. It's like not really a Yu-Gi-Oh game, but you do use cards and it does use actual Yu-Gi-Oh cards, but it's a grid-based, turn-based strategy game. So really, really love that game. If you're into turn-based strategy games, it's or Yu-Gi-Oh. I think it's a really, really great game. September 17th, I played Sonic Adventure or finished Sonic Adventure, and I counted this as a game that I had never finished before. I absolutely had finished Sonic Adventure before in the sense that I had beaten it with all the characters, but I had actually never done like the final little story beat where you play as Super Sonic. That was a weird little sort of detour I had in the fall with Reagan where we were playing kind of, I guess we were kind of coming off of Skyrim and stuff. I don't know. We were just like kind of playing childhood games for me, and I was having like every once in a while I get in that mood where I'm nostalgic and I want to just kind of play games that I enjoyed from when I was a kid. And it had been a long time since I played Sonic Adventure. And so we did that. And Reagan got really into the Chow Garden stuff, and that was kind of fun. And we even moved him over to Sonic Adventure 2. We started Sonic Adventure 2, but by then I kind of got out of my system, and so we haven't finished that. But yeah, that was kind of an interesting experience. And then September 25th, we finished God of War from 2018 God of War, and it's now Reagan's favorite game of all time, which was huge. I definitely never would have expected that, but she absolutely loved God of War. She really loved the storytelling. She loved Kratos. She surprisingly really loved Atreus. And yeah, we have started Ragnarok, and we're working our way through that. It's been a few weeks since we actually played it because we've been doing other things, but certainly next year we'll finish that game as well, which I've only played once. I already had the Platinum Trophy in God of War 2018, which I got in the lead up to Ragnarok. But yeah, that was fun. That was fun playing that game again, and the fact that Reagan really loved it, of course, really put that over the line for how satisfying it was. November 17th, I finished Mass Effect 3 with my brother Brandon, and then we decided that we were going to play through the Halo. So the last two games, December 1st and December 15th, are Halo Reach and Halo 1, and that's it. Those are the games that I played or finished in 2025. So, hopefully I'll do a little bit better next year and actually spend some time playing some games that I haven't playing more games that I haven't finished before and actually finishing more games. But at the same time, I've really been enjoying being a more well-rounded person in 2025, like spending a lot more time reading, spending more time, watching shows and movies, spending more time listening to music. And I do plan on continuing to do those things in 2026 and maybe, you know, not spending quite as much of my time playing video games as I have in the past. So, but maybe it'll incentivize me to actually spend the more limited time that I do have playing games, playing stuff that I haven't played before. But yeah, that's kind of my look back at 2025. It was an interesting year for me. I don't know it's going to be interesting to see how different my life is next year. Hopefully by then Reagan is going to be employed and, we could move by this time next year. And who knows, maybe we'll have a kid on the way by this time next year. It will be interesting. It's going to be an interesting year, 2026 for me, but we will see how all that goes. And at least for now, it's been fun for me as always, to sort of look back on the year and reflect on the way I spent my time this year. So thanks for indulging me on that. Thank you for listening. And, in the meantime, remember that you can write into the show, ControlledBurnes with an ES at gmail.com. If you like it, you can subscribe, follow, like, review wherever you listen to your podcast. In the weeks ahead, we're going to be having, I'm going to finish, I've been back working again on my top 100 artists. So I'm just putting the finishing touches on my absolute top picks. And we will have that coming up very soon. I mentioned I want to do a podcast with Reagan on A Clash of Kings, or no, I'm sorry, Storm of Swords. And sort of my reaction to that, my updated ranking of the book characters through that book. And, then we'll have maybe some other things in store for the podcast in 2026. But for now, we'll call it here. Until next time, keep it warm.